The message arrived in the diplomatic pouch as a trade correspondence from a Veyrath wool merchant. It was not from a Veyrath wool merchant. King Darren had been decoding it for 20 minutes when the specific quality of what he was reading restructured every assumption he had been operating under for 14 months. The intelligence was extraordinary, not in the particular general sense of unusually good information, but in the specific technical sense of a document that contained operational detail at a precision and depth that could only be produced by someone who had been inside the Veyrath court's advisory chambers for an extended period. The assassination timeline, the specific courier network, the names of the 6 council members who had agreed to the payment, the particular fail-safe mechanism that the Veyrath leadership had built into the operation. He had read to the 3rd page before he understood the source. The final line of the message was not coded. It said, "I did not do this for you. I did it because the pack needed someone to. You should know the difference." It was signed with the specific sent signature notation of a biological gift identification, the particular registry code for the sent sovereignty gift class that the kingdom's gift records had never formally documented. He set the message down. He thought about the goodwill transfer his council had executed 14 months ago while he was in the Northern Territories. He thought, "I sent my greatest intelligence asset to the enemy court as a bargaining chip, and she saved my life anyway." He thought, "I need to bring her home." Which country are you listening from right now? Please drop it in the comments below. I would love to know how far this story reaches. The council's summons had arrived on a Thursday morning with the particular organized quality of something that had been decided before the summons was sent. Vale had been in the administrative records function for 4 years. The specific careful work of someone who understood that the minor status track in Darren's governance structure had limited vertical mobility, and who had found genuine satisfaction in the particular precision of records management. The specific daily pleasure of a system running well because the right person was maintaining it. She had not been ambitious in the direction that the court's visible hierarchies rewarded. She had been excellent in the direction the court's visible hierarchies did not notice. The council chamber had held 7 members, and the particular organized quality of people receiving a visitor for an administrative communication rather than a governance discussion. The senior council member had said, "The Veyrath court has requested a goodwill gesture as part of the current diplomatic normalization process." He had said, "The gesture will take the form of a cultural exchange, a representative of our court's minor status population to serve in the Veyrath court's household function for a period of 12 to 18 months. He had said, "You have been selected as the representative." She had said, "I was not consulted about this selection." He had said, "The selection process does not require consultation." He had said it with the specific flat quality of someone communicating a fact rather than a policy, the particular tone of someone who had not expected this response and was not going to engage with it. She had said, "The king approved this transfer." The council member had said, "The king is in the Northern Territories." He had said, "The council has appropriate authority for diplomatic arrangements of this category." She had said, "What category is a person?" He had said nothing for a moment. He had then said, "The arrangement is finalized." He had said, "The escort will arrive Friday morning." She had been given 1 day. The escort had arrived Friday morning with the particular efficient quality of a governance operation that had been organized by people who understood logistics and had not considered the specific human experience of being organized. She had been handed across the border at the third crossing point with the particular administrative ceremony of a diplomatic transfer, the specific documentation, the particular formal language of an exchange that required its human component to sign acknowledgement of the terms. The terms had been 12 to 18 months in the Veyrath court's household function, with the specific conditions of a cultural exchange that translated in practice to the particular ambiguous status of someone who was too high rank to be ordinary staff and too low rank to be a genuine diplomatic presence. The Veyrath court had received her with the specific practiced hospitality of a court that had requested something and was receiving it, the particular quality of people who had gotten what they wanted and were being gracious about it in the specific way of people who did not think much about what they had gotten. She had read the court in the first 3 hours. The reading had been specific and comprehensive and had produced the particular clear picture of an institution that ran on the specific social architecture that wolf courts ran on, the precise hierarchical signaling of scent and status, and the particular ambient intelligence network of people who could smell each other's emotional states and identify each other by biological signature from across a room. She had thought, I cannot survive here as what I am. She had thought, I need to be something else. The gift had been present in its passive form for her entire life, the particular ambient scent. Variability that she had attributed to emotional sensitivity and that others had attributed to the ordinary fluctuation that health and mood produced in scent presentation. She had never understood it as a gift because it had never been fully activated, had never been tested against the specific operational necessity of survival in a hostile court full of highly sensitive alpha scent readers. The first deliberate activation had been on the 4th day, in the Veyrath court's main reception hall, when a senior Veyrath noble had begun moving toward her with the particular purposeful quality of someone who had identified an unfamiliar lower status scent signature and was going to investigate it. She had thought, become someone he already knows. She had not known whether the gift could do that. She had reached for the specific internal quality that the passive level produced, the particular biological permission she had always been able to give herself to present differently, and she had extended it deliberately and fully toward the specific scent signature of the mid-ranked noble she had spent 3 hours standing near in the reception hall. The senior noble had walked past her without stopping. She had stood very still and had thought, I see. She had spent the following week learning the gift's full operational range. The gift's mechanics were specific and learnable. She had approached the learning with the particular methodical precision of someone who understood that understanding a system required systematic testing, that the gift had parameters and those parameters could be mapped, and that mapping them was the specific survival priority of someone who had arrived in an enemy court with nothing but the biological capacity she was only beginning to understand. The passive level was the foundation, the ambient scent presentation that she had always had, the particular quality of someone who could allow their scent to drift toward whatever the immediate social environment required without the specific conscious direction that the active level needed. This had been running her entire life. It had made her the specific kind of person who was socially comfortable in various environments. Without always understanding why, the gift's passive level had been smoothing her scent presentation to match the ambient social context in the specific unconscious way of a system that had been operating below its owner's awareness. The active level required intention. She had learned this through the specific systematic testing of a week of deliberate experiments in various sections of the Veyrath court. The active level required her to hold a specific target presentation in mind and to extend the particular biological permission toward it, not the vague permission of the passive level, but the directed specific permission of someone choosing a destination. The gift responded to the specificity. The more precisely she could identify what she wanted to project, the more accurately the gift produced it. Category signatures, the specific social class presentations that Wolf society read as the biological markers of status, were the easiest. The high noble scent, old blood, governance authority. The specific chemical compounds that generations of high-status living produced in the biological systems of people whose stress hormones and cortisol profiles were shaped by inherited privilege. She had stood near a Veyrath high noble for 2 hours and had read the scent signature with the particular focused attention of the gift's receiving capacity, had internalized the category profile, and had produced it on her own body with the specific accuracy that the gift's active level could achieve. The court scent readers had not noticed the difference. Individual signature replication, the specific reproduction of a particular identified individual's unique biological scent, required extended proximity and the particular focused receiving mode that the gift used for detailed biological reading. She had spent 3 days in sustained proximity with a mid-ranked Veyrath noble named Lady Sen, whose access level and social position made her the specific optimal identity for embedded intelligence work. High enough access to attend advisory sessions. Low enough profile to avoid the particular scrutiny that senior figures attracted. She had internalized Sen's individual scent profile across 3 days of careful proximity and had produced it with the specific accuracy that the active level's full deployment achieved. She had attended a closed advisory session as Lady Sen on the 22nd day. Lady Sen had been in her quarters with a genuine illness at the time. No one in the session had noticed anything was wrong. The intelligence work had begun in earnest from that point. She had been systematic. The particular methodical quality of her records management background had translated directly into the specific intelligence discipline of someone who understood that information had to be organized to be useful. That a year of embedded intelligence was only as valuable as the specific organizational structure that made it accessible to the people who needed to act on it. She had developed, across the 14 months, the particular comprehensive picture of the Veyrath court's governance structure, its military planning, its diplomatic alliances, its internal power dynamics, and the specific constellation of factional interests that were converging on the particular political outcome that would most directly threaten Darrent's kingdom. The assassination plot had become visible at the 11-month mark. Not all at once. The particular gradual emergence of an intelligence picture from multiple fragments. The specific assembly of information that required the full 11 months of embedded access to produce enough fragments for the picture to resolve. The payment network. The Veyrath court's specific senior advisor who had been coordinating the operation. The 6 council members in Darrent's own court who had agreed to facilitate the operation's final stage, the particular internal dimension of the plot that made it the specific existential threat it was. She had held the complete picture for 3 months while she gathered the specific operational detail that would make the intelligence undeniable. She had been gathering it as Lady Sen, the mid-ranked Varath noble whose illness had been suspiciously convenient on several subsequent occasions when closed advisory sessions had occurred. The loneliness had a specific quality that she had not anticipated. She had anticipated the fear, the particular calibrated fear of someone who understood the specific consequences of the gift's exposure in an environment where scent was the foundational identity verification mechanism. She had anticipated the cognitive load, the specific sustained attention required to maintain a complex false scent profile, while simultaneously conducting intelligence work while simultaneously navigating the social architecture of a court she had not grown up in and did not have the natural instinctive fluency of a lifetime resident. She had anticipated the physical cost, the particular depletion of sustained high-fidelity scent, production across months of intensive operational use. She had not fully anticipated the specific loneliness of being the only person in the enemy court, who knew what she was doing and why she was doing it and who she actually was. She had been multiple people for 14 months. Lady Sen for the closed advisory sessions, a mid-ranked trade liaison named Merchant Avon for the commercial intelligence channels she had accessed through the specific financial networks the Varath court used for its external payments. A senior administrative functionary named Clerk Besson for the archive access sessions where she had built the particular comprehensive record of the Varath court's political correspondence. And herself, the specific daily identity of someone in the cultural exchange function who was performing the particular careful unremarkableness of someone who was exactly what she had been told she was and nothing more. For people across 14 months, and none of them were actually her. She had thought about Darren's kingdom across all 14 months, not with the particular longing of homesickness. The specific careful strategic thinking of someone who was gathering intelligence for a home she was going to return to and who needed that home to still be worth returning to when she arrived. She had thought about the pack, the specific community of people who had nothing to do with the council's decision and who would bear the consequences of the assassination's success. She had thought about them with the particular quality of someone who had chosen to act for people who needed protection rather than for people who deserved it. The distinction had been important to maintain. She had not been doing this for Darren. She had been doing this for the pack, which was the specific moral architecture that had allowed her to make the decision without the particular bitterness of doing something for someone who had not earned it, distorting the work. The assassination plot in its complete operational form was the particular sophisticated architecture of an operation that had been planned across 3 years of careful preparation. The Varath court's senior intelligence advisor, a man named Lord Evren, had identified the specific window of governance transition that would follow a successful assassination, had cultivated the 6 council members in Darren's own court who were the particular internal facilitation that the operation required, and had built the specific operational timeline that was designed to appear as a natural governance crisis rather than the coordinated attack it was. She had the full picture. She had the specific names, dates, payment records, communication transcripts, an operational timeline that made the intelligence undeniable. She had sat with it for 3 months. The decision to send the intelligence home had not been as difficult as she had expected. She had thought, on the day she sat down to construct the coded message, that the decision would produce the particular internal conflict of someone being asked to protect a person who had failed to protect them. What she had found instead was the specific clean clarity of someone who had already separated the moral accounting, which was real and would require its own reckoning, from the operational necessity, which was also real and which required her to act. She had thought, I am going to send this message. She had thought, and then I am going to finish the final operational details and send the complete version. She had thought, and then I am going to wait. The coded message's construction required the particular tradecraft she had developed across 14 months of intelligence work, the specific format that would communicate both the intelligence content and its source without being interceptable by the Veyrath court's communication monitoring, and without being deniable by the Darren court's intelligence function when it arrived. She had worked on it for 2 weeks. The tradecraft problem was specific. A message of this intelligence value, sent through any channel that the Veyrath court monitored, which was most channels, would be intercepted before it reached Darren's governance. A message sent through the particular diplomatic channels that the border crossing controlled would be reviewed by both courts' administrative functions before delivery. A message sent through informal carrier networks was the specific security risk of a communication whose chain of custody was not controlled. She had spent 3 weeks mapping the Veyrath court's communication monitoring architecture, the particular systematic study of what was watched, how it was watched, and where the specific gaps in the watching were. The Veyrath wool trade was one of the specific gaps. Not because the wool trade was unsupervised, it was supervised, with the particular administrative attention that any significant commercial network received. But the wool trade's communication channels were supervised by the commercial regulation function rather than the intelligence monitoring function. And the commercial regulation function used a different document review protocol that was specifically calibrated for financial fraud rather than political intelligence. A document formatted as commercial correspondence, containing the specific content markers of routine trade communication, would pass through the commercial review without triggering the intelligence review's deeper examination protocol. She had formatted 14 months of operational intelligence as wool trade correspondence. The specific coding was her own design, built on the particular organizational system of the records management function she had run for 4 years in Darren's kingdom. Using the specific filing notation she had developed that looked like standard inventory categorization and was actually the particular precise encoding of intelligence content in the specific format she knew Darren's administrative function would be able to decode if they knew what they were looking at. She had included, at the beginning of the document, a short decoded passage that explained the coding system. This was the specific tradecraft risk of the message, the decoded section that a skilled intercept analyst might identify as unusual in a trade document. She had positioned it in the particular location within the document's structure that the commercial review protocol would process after the standard financial content, by which point the communication had typically already been cleared. The channel selection was the particular final decision of the construction process. She had identified a Veyrath wool merchant named Garav, who made the specific monthly trade run to the border crossing at the third point, the same crossing she had been brought through 14 months ago. The particular administrative familiarity of someone who crossed regularly and whose documents were processed by the specific customs function that she had studied in the first 3 months of her intelligence work. She had delivered the package to Garav's commercial correspondence batch through the specific courier service that collected trade documents from registered merchant houses on the morning of the border run. The package had been indistinguishable from the 17 other commercial correspondence packages in the batch. She had watched the courier collect it. She had thought, it is in the channel. She had thought, now I wait. The waiting produced a specific quality of suspended time, the particular quality of someone who has completed the most significant action available and is now in the specific operational window, where the outcome depends on factors outside their control. She had managed the waiting with the particular discipline of someone who had learned across 14 months that unmanaged waiting was the specific cognitive state most likely to produce the kind of behavioral tell that a sensitive court could read. She had gone to the advisory sessions as Lady Sen. She had gathered the final operational details of the assassination timeline. She had waited. The diplomatic pouch arrived on a Tuesday. Darren had been in the governance council session when the aide had brought the pouch in with the particular quality of someone interrupting a session for a reason they understood to be significant but could not fully explain. The aide had said, "A communication flagged by the intelligence review function, my lord." He had said, "The commercial review cleared it, but the content triggered the intelligence function's secondary review." He had taken the pouch. He had looked at the document inside. The first page looked exactly like a wool trade communication, the specific commercial language, the particular inventory notation, the standard format of merchant correspondence. He had read the first page with the particular careful attention of someone who understood that the intelligence function's secondary review did not produce false alerts, and who was therefore reading a document that was something other than what it appeared to be. The coded section had been at the bottom of the first page. It said, "The notation system used in this document follows the administrative filing protocol developed for Darren's Kingdom's records management function, Category 7 archive organization. The intelligence content is encoded in the inventory categorization lines. Each inventory entry corresponds to an intelligence datum in the following format." He had read this twice. He had thought, the records management function. He had read the second page, applying the decoding system the introduction had described, and had received the particular specific quality of intelligence that the decoding produced. Names, dates, payment amounts, the specific communication transcripts of the 6 council members who had agreed to facilitate the assassination's internal dimension. He had read to the third page. The third page contained the operational timeline, the specific date, the particular mechanism, the precise window. He had been very still for a long time. He had then read back through the document from the beginning, this time reading the encoded content rather than the surface text, and had received the full 14 months of embedded intelligence in the specific organized format of someone who had been building this picture systematically across the entire period and had organized it for maximum clarity and minimum decoding time. It had taken him 40 minutes to read the full document. At the end of 40 minutes, he had understood several things simultaneously. Someone had been embedded in the Verath court for 14 months. That person had produced the most comprehensive intelligence picture of a rival court that his governance had ever received. That person had identified an assassination plot against him with sufficient operational detail to mount a complete defensive response. That person had sent the intelligence through a channel of their own design using a coding system they had developed independently. And then he had read the final line. "I did not do this for you. I did it because the pack needed someone to. You should know the difference." He had said to the empty office, the records management function. He had thought about the goodwill transfer 14 months ago. He had thought, I do not know the name of the person my counsel transferred. He had thought, I need to know. He had called for the counsel records. The counsel records arrived within the hour. The goodwill transfer documentation was in the diplomatic section, the particular administrative. Location of arrangements that had been categorized as diplomatic functions and filed accordingly. Welcome back to the Whispers of Alpha King channel. Today we're going to present a new story that I believe you'll be very curious about and interested in because of its incredibly captivating content. Now let's explore it together until the end of the video. This is a fictional story compiled from various sources, supported by AI, and the content is purely for entertainment and educational purposes. He had read the documentation with the specific focused attention of someone who had been reading intelligence for the past hour and had not yet downshifted from that mode. The documentation was thorough. The specific administrative process, the selection criteria, the council member who had conducted the transfer briefing, the escort arrangements, the border crossing notation, the terms of the cultural exchange agreement, the particular framing of the arrangement as a standard diplomatic goodwill gesture. At the bottom of the documentation was the name, Vale, Records Management Function. For years of service, minor status classification. Transferred to Varath Court Cultural Exchange Program, departure date confirmed. He had read this and had held the specific quality of someone who was assembling a picture from elements that were individually comprehensible and collectively devastating. He had summoned the senior council member. The senior council member had arrived with the particular composed quality of someone who had been expecting a governance conversation about the diplomatic arrangement for the past several weeks and had been preparing for it. Darren had said, the goodwill transfer from 14 months ago. The council member had said, yes, my lord. He had said, the diplomatic arrangement with the Varath court. He had said, the arrangement has been producing positive normalization outcomes in the border commerce data. He had said, I want you to describe the selection process. The council member had described it, the particular administrative process of identifying an available minor status individual whose gift. Profile indicators, the specific ambient scent variability notation in her registry record were the particular type that the Varath court had expressed interest in, the efficiency of the selection, the specific timing relative to the Northern Territory's governance visit that had placed the king in a location where his review of the arrangement would have been operationally inconvenient for the diplomatic timeline. He had said, you selected her because the timing made my review inconvenient. The council member had said, the council had appropriate authority for arrangements of this category. He had said it again with the same flat quality the council member who had briefed Vale had used on the Thursday morning 14 months ago. He had said, what is her gift registry classification? The council member had said, minor scent sensitivity. He had said, the registry notation shows ambient variability in scent presentation consistent with emotional sensitivity rather than formal gift expression. He had said, the gift the message was signed with. He had placed the intelligence document on the table. He had watched the council member read the gift registry notation at the document's end. The scent sovereignty gift classification. He had said, she has been in the Varath court for 14 months with the most strategically significant scent-based gift in the kingdom's documented history. He had said, she used it to gather 14 months of embedded intelligence. He had said, She identified an assassination plot and sent the intelligence through a channel of her own design. He had said, "She saved my life and the kingdom's stability and the specific lives of the pack members who would have borne the consequences of a successful assassination." He had said, "And your description of the selection process includes the specific notation that the timing made my review inconvenient." The council member had said nothing. He had said, "I am going to the Varath court to bring her home." He had said, "The council will provide me with a full accounting of every decision made during my absence in the Northern Territories that involved a human transfer." He had said, "Every one." He had gone to pack. The diplomatic extraction had taken 11 days. She had not known it was happening until the 9th day, when the specific quality of the Varath court's administrative atmosphere had shifted in the particular way that the approach of a high-status diplomatic delegation produced, the specific organized urgency of a court preparing to receive a sovereign. She had been conducting the final documentation of the assassination timeline's operational details when she had felt the shift. She had thought, "Someone significant is coming." She had thought, "It might be him." She had continued the documentation. On the 10th day, she had heard Darrent's name in the advisory session she was attending as Lady Sen. The particular administrative discussion of a Darren delegation's request for a cultural exchange. Review meeting, the specific diplomatic language that the Varath court was using to describe a conversation that was clearly about something more specific than cultural exchange. She had attended 3 more sessions as Lady Sen in the following 48 hours and had built the specific picture of what the diplomatic request contained. A formal request for the return of the cultural exchange representative, citing specific welfare provisions in the original exchange agreement that required periodic review of the representative's condition and circumstances. The welfare provisions were real. They were also the particular diplomatic language of someone who had read the agreement carefully and identified the specific clause that could be used to request return without triggering the political friction of a direct accusation. She had thought, "He read the agreement." She had thought, "That is useful information." The extraction meeting had been formal and brief, the particular calibrated quality of a diplomatic exchange conducted by people on both sides who understood that the outcome had been determined before the meeting, and that the meeting was the specific administrative formality of a decision that had already been made. She had been present in her actual identity, Vale, cultural exchange representative, for the first time in 14 months in a formal court setting. The Varath court's senior administrator had said the specific formal words of the exchange agreement's welfare provision and had confirmed her release. She had said thank you in the particular measured quality of someone who understood that the exchange was a diplomatic transaction and who was not going to complicate it with emotional expression. She had walked to the Darren delegation. Darren had been there. She had not expected him to be there personally. She had expected a senior diplomatic aide or the particular middle management of a diplomatic extraction. He was there with the specific quality of someone who had made a personal decision to be there rather than delegating it. She had looked at him. He had said, "Vale." She had said, "Yes." He had said, "I came myself." She had said, "I noticed." He had said nothing for a moment. He had said, "The border crossing is 3 hours." She had said, "I know." She had said, "I came through it 14 months ago in the other direction." He had said, "Yes." They had walked to the carriages. She had thought, in the specific quality of the first 3 hours of the return journey. I am going home. She had thought, I do not yet know what home is going to mean when I arrive. She had thought, I am going to find out. The private conversation happened on the second day of the return journey. Not in the carriage, in the particular private space of the evening's rest stop. The specific quality of a political party making camp with the particular organized efficiency of a governance delegation that knew how to establish a functional temporary headquarters. She had been assigned the specific comfortable quarters of a diplomatic guest and had spent the first evening reading the final operational documentation she had assembled before the extraction, organizing it in the particular format that an intelligence debrief would require. He had knocked in the specific pattern of someone who had been standing outside the door for a moment before deciding to knock. She had said, "Come in." He had come in and had sat in the room's single chair with the particular quality of someone who had prepared what they were going to say and had arrived at the moment where the preparation was about to be tested. He had said, "I did not know." She had said, "I know you did not know." He had said, "The council executed the transfer while I was in the Northern Territories." He had said, "They provided a summary framing that did not include the specific human dimensions of the arrangement." He had said, "I received the summary and moved to the next governance function." She had said, "Yes." He had said, "I should have established that transfers of this kind required my personal review before execution." He had said, "I had a governance accountability gap and the council used it." He had said, "The gap is mine regardless of who used it." She had said, "Yes." She had said it with the particular plain quality of accurate information delivered without softening. She had said, "You had a governance gap and it produced a specific harm, and the harm is real regardless of whether you intended it." He had said, "Yes." He had said, "I am sorry." She had said, "I know." She had said, "I want to tell you what sorry requires." He had said, "Yes." He had said it with the specific quality of someone who had been expecting this and who was genuinely prepared to receive it rather than manage it. She had said, "It requires the full accounting." She had said, "Not the administrative accountability of reviewing your governance gap, though that is also required." She had said, "The specific acknowledgement that a person was used as a political instrument without her consent, in your name, through your governance structure, and that the specific harm of that use is real regardless of the specific outcome it produced." He had said, "Yes." She had said, "I am not the specific outcome." She had said, "I am the person the outcome happened to." She had said, "The intelligence I produced does not retroactively justify the transfer." She had said, "The fact that the transfer produced something valuable does not make the transfer acceptable." He had said, "Yes." He had said, "I understand the distinction." She had said, "The intelligence debrief." He had said, "Yes." She had said, "I want it to be formal." She had said, "I want the full intelligence picture in the governance record as a formal contribution from an identified intelligence practitioner, with the specific attribution and institutional recognition that a contribution of this scope requires." He had said, "Yes." He had said, "I am arranging the formal debrief session for when we arrive." She had said, "Good." He had said, "Veil." She had said, "Yes." He had said, "The gift." She had said, "Yes." He had said, "Your registry classification was minor scent sensitivity." She had said, "Yes." She had said, The registry's assessment protocol had not produced the specific testing conditions that would have identified the full gift. She had said, the enemy court's survival requirements were the specific testing conditions. He had said, the council transferred you because the registry said minor scent sensitivity. She had said, yes. She had said, they transferred me because I was available and convenient. She had said, the registry classification was the specific administrative justification for a decision that had already been made. He had said, yes. He had said, I know. He had said it with the particular quality of someone who had been sitting with this specific knowledge for 11 days and had not found a way to reduce its weight and had stopped trying. She had said, the debrief begins when we arrive. He had said, yes. She had gone back to the documentation. The formal debrief had begun on the morning of the 4th day after their return. She had been systematic. The particular organized quality of the records management background applied to the specific intelligence picture she had been building for 14 months. The comprehensive, ordered account of everything she had gathered, organized in the format that governance action required rather than the format that passive reading produced. She had prepared the debrief in advance. The intelligence function's senior analyst had been assigned to receive it, with Darren present for the specific portions that the assassination plot's operational detail required immediate governance response. The debrief had taken 3 days. Not because she was slow, because the intelligence picture was genuinely comprehensive and the governance function receiving it needed the specific time that understanding a 14-month embedded intelligence operation required. She had produced accounts of the Verath court's governance structure, its military planning, its diplomatic alliance architecture, its internal factional dynamics, its financial networks, its communication monitoring architecture, and the specific comprehensive operational account of the assassination plot from its inception to its current timeline. The intelligence analyst had said, at the end of the 2nd day, this is the most complete picture of a rival court that this governance has ever received from a single source. She had said, yes. He had said, how did you maintain the embedded identities for 14 months without detection? She had said, the scent sovereignty gift at full operational expression produces a false scent profile that is indistinguishable from the genuine profile at normal social proximity. She had said, the gift's stability, its ability to maintain a consistent profile under emotional stress, was the specific operational capacity that made 14 months of embedded work possible. He had said, the gift can maintain a false profile under emotional stress. She had said, yes. She had said, I was terrified for approximately the first 3 months. She had said, the high noble scent profile I was maintaining during that period did not register fear. She had said, that is the gift's specific advantage in intelligence applications. The analyst had made the particular careful notation of someone documenting an unprecedented capability. Darren had been present for the assassination plot's operational account. He had received the specific complete picture of the 6 council members' involvement with the particular focused attention of someone who was simultaneously processing strategic governance, response, and the specific quality of what it meant that the council members who had facilitated the assassination plot's internal dimension were the same members who had arranged the goodwill transfer. She had said, yes. She had said, the overlap is not a coincidence. He had said, the 6 council members who agreed to facilitate the assassination. She had said, yes. She had said, 3 of the 6 were involved in the original transfer arrangement. She had said, the Varath court's cultivation of internal council members predated the transfer by approximately 18 months. He had said, they cultivated council members who then arranged a goodwill transfer. She had said, yes. She had said, I do not know whether the transfer was part of the cultivation's objective or an opportunistic arrangement that the cultivated council members enabled. She had said, the intelligence does not resolve that question with certainty. He had said, but the overlap exists. She had said, yes. He had been very still for a long time. He had said, the pack. She had said, yes. He had said, you sent the intelligence because the pack needed someone to. She had said, yes. She had said, I was very clear about why I was sending it. He had said, the final line of the message. She had said, yes. He had said, I know the difference. She had said, good. The council's formal political response had arrived on the morning of the 4th day. The formal petition was 13 pages. She had read it and identified its architecture in the first 4 pages. A document produced by people who understood that their specific vulnerability, the transfer's circumstances, and the 6 members' Varath cultivation was going to become the formal governance record unless they succeeded in foreclosing the intelligence's formal admission. The first argument addressed the intelligence's source. That intelligence obtained through an unauthorized embedded operation in a foreign court without the governance authority's knowledge or approval could not constitute a formally admissible intelligence contribution, and that the specific method of the intelligence's gathering, false identity presentation using an undocumented gift capacity, raised specific ethical questions about its admissibility. The second argument addressed the gift, that the sent sovereignty gift classification, not present in the formal registry under its full specification, was an undocumented capacity whose operational use in a foreign court constituted an unregistered intelligence operation, and that the governance authority's liability for the operation's conduct required formal review before the operation's products could be used. The third argument addressed the 6 council members' intelligence account specifically, that the account of council members' involvement in a foreign court's operation was based on evidence gathered through false identity intelligence methods by a practitioner with no formal intelligence authorization, and that using this account for governance action against council members constituted the specific procedural violation of due process. The fourth argument, the one she had been expecting, addressed the transfer directly. That the goodwill transfer had been a legitimate diplomatic arrangement conducted under appropriate council authority. That characterizing the arrangement as a harm required a finding of intent that the evidence did not support, and that the reframing of a legitimate diplomatic arrangement as a governance failure constituted the particular political instrumentalization of administrative processes. She had set the petition down. She had said, they're going to argue that the transfer was legitimate. Darren had said, yes. She had said, the argument requires treating a person as a diplomatic instrument without establishing that a diplomatic instrument is an appropriate category for a person. He had said, yes. She had said, the formal court session needs to address all 4 arguments simultaneously rather than sequentially. He had said, yes. He had said, the gifts registry formalization needs to be complete before the session. She had said, the registry assessment. He had said, I have requested the senior gift evaluator. He had said, the assessment is scheduled for tomorrow. She had said, the 6 council members. He had said, the specific governance process for the 6 is in motion through the independent accountability function. He had said, the accountability function is independent of the council's authority. She had said, good. He had said, the petition's first argument, the unauthorized operation. She had said, yes. She had said, the counter-argument is the specific governance authorization that retroactively covers the operation's conduct. She had said, the transfer agreement's welfare provisions created an implicit authorization for her to take any action necessary to preserve her safety and welfare in the exchange environment. She had said, intelligence gathering in a court that was hosting an assassination plot against her former kingdom was the particular action necessary to preserve the safety of the people whose welfare she was responsible for. He had said, the welfare provisions argument. She had said, yes. She had said, it is legally thin. She had said, it is also accurate. He had said, I am also filing a retroactive governance authorization for the operation. She had said, yes. She had said, file it before the session. He had said, it was filed this morning. She had said, good. The petition's timeline for the formal session had given them 4 days. The evening of the 3rd day had the particular quality of a night before something significant that had been building toward arrival for a long time. She was in the intelligence function's working space, reviewing the session's presentation materials. The specific comprehensive organization of 14 months of intelligence in the format that formal court presentation required, when she thought about the option of not presenting, not in the way of serious consideration, more in the particular way of someone who has the gift to be anyone and the specific knowledge of where the exits are, who occasionally acknowledges the option because acknowledging it is the specific honest self-assessment of someone who understands their own choices. She could leave. She had the gift. She could produce the specific scent signature of a mid-rank traveler, walk out of the palace's eastern gate in the particular ordinary quality of someone going about mid-rank business, be at the border crossing by morning. She had the tradecraft. She had the contacts she had developed across the 14 months in the Varath court that could be translated into a different kind of embedded existence in a different court with a different mission. She had sat with this option for approximately 4 minutes and had found it insufficient for the same reason she had found the option of not sending the message insufficient. The pack needed someone to stay and present the full account in the formal court session, and she was the specific person who had the full account and the capacity to present it, and the option of leaving was only available to her at the cost of the people who needed the account to be in the formal record. She was still in the working space when Darren came in. He came in the particular quality she had come to recognize across the return journey and the 4 days since, the specific directness of someone who was not managing a presentation and who had decided that the genuine mode was the appropriate mode for the conversation he was going to have. He sat at the working space's secondary table and said, "The session materials." She said, "Yes." She said, "The presentation is organized in the specific format that the formal record requires." She said, "The gift registry assessment's findings are in the opening section." She said, "The 14 months of intelligence are organized by category and timeline." She said, "The assassination plot's operational account is the closing section." He said, and the 6 council members. She said, "The independent accountability function's preliminary findings are included as a supplementary record." She said, "The findings corroborate the intelligence account on every specific point that has been independently verified." He said, "Every specific point." She said, "Yes." He said, "Veil." She said, "Yes." He said, "I want to say something before the session changes the context." She said, "Say it." He said, "The final line of the message." She said, "Yes." He said, "I did not do this for you. I did it because the pack needed someone to." He said it in the specific quality of someone quoting a document they have read many times and who has been thinking about what the document communicated since the first reading. He said, "You drew a line between what was done to you and what you chose to do." She said, "Yes." He said, "I have been sitting with the specific quality of that line for 14 days. He said it with the plain quality of accurate information rather than performance. He said, "The line is real." He said, "The things the council did in my name are on one side of it." He said, "What you chose to do is on the other." He said, "Both sides are real and the line between them is important." She said, "Yes." He said, "I want to say something about what I have seen in 14 days of working alongside you on the return journey and the debrief and the session preparation." She said, "Say it." He said, "The bond." He said it with the specific directness of someone who had made a specific decision about this conversation. He said, "I have known it was present since the 3rd day of the return journey." He said, "I am naming it before the court session because naming it after would allow it to appear to be a response to the session's outcome." He said, "It is not a response to the session's outcome." He said, "It has been present since the first time you told me what sorry required." She said, "Yes." She said, "I know." He said, "You have been building evidence." She said, "Yes." She said, 14 days of evidence in addition to everything that produced the evidence." She said, "The man who came to the Verath court personally rather than delegating the extraction." She said, "The man who read the transfer agreement and found the welfare provision clause and used it as the specific diplomatic mechanism for bringing me home." She said, "The man who sat in the debrief room for 3 days and received the full account without managing it." He said, "And?" She said, "And the bond is present." He said, "Yes." She said, "The session is tomorrow." He said, "Yes." She said, "Yes." She went back to the materials. The full court session had 64 members. The council chamber was the particular space where the Thursday morning briefing 14 months ago had occurred. The same room, the same organized formal quality, the same specific institutional atmosphere of a governance body receiving important information. She had stood in this room before and had been told she was being transferred. She was standing in it again to present what the transfer had produced. The gift registry assessment's formal findings were in the session's opening record. Veil. Sent sovereignty gift classification. Full operational capacity confirmed. Estimated operational range consistent with the most significant documented expression of the gift class in the kingdom's history. She said, "The petition argues that the gift is undocumented and that its operational use in a foreign court raises ethical questions." She said, "The gift has now been formally documented." She said, "The ethical questions about its use are addressed by the governance authorization filed 4 days ago, which covers the operation retroactively and by the welfare provision argument, which I will present in detail. She said, "I am going to demonstrate the gift." She produced 3 scent profiles in sequence, the specific high noble presentation of old blood and governance authority, the particular mid-rank merchant scent of commerce and mobility, and then the precise individual signature of the senior council member who had delivered the transfer briefing 14 months ago. The senior council member in question had been present in the session. He had looked at her with the particular quality of someone experiencing the specific sensory confusion of smelling themselves from across a room. She said, "The gift's operational precision is such that no scent-based identity verification in the Verath Court's standard protocol could have identified a false presentation under active gift deployment." She said, "This is the specific capacity that made 14 months of embedded intelligence work possible." She presented the 14 months of intelligence in the organized format she had prepared, not reading it in full. The specific summary that communicated the scope and precision of the intelligence picture to the formal court record, with the complete documentation available for formal review. She presented the assassination plot's operational account in full. She said, "The petition argues that the 6 council members' involvement cannot be used for governance action because the evidence was gathered through unauthorized methods by an unauthorized practitioner." She said, "The authorization is established." She said, "The independent accountability function's preliminary findings, which are based on the function's own independent investigation of the communication records and financial trails that the intelligence identified, corroborate the account on every verified point." She said, "The petition's arguments are addressed." She said, "The court has the complete account." She looked at Darren. He said, "The king will respond." Darren stood at the governance position. He said, 14 months ago, while I was in the Northern Territories on governance business, my council executed a goodwill diplomatic transfer to the Verath court." He said, "The transfer involved sending a person, Vale, administrative records practitioner, to the Verath court as a cultural exchange representative." He said, "The council did not consult the individual being transferred." He said, "The council did not obtain royal review of the arrangement before execution." He said, "The council's summary framing, which I received upon return from the Northern Territories, did not include the specific human dimensions of the transfer." He said, "I received the summary and moved to the next governance function." He said, "I did not review the individual transferred." He said, "I did not investigate the specific circumstances of the arrangement." He said, "The accountability for this governance gap is mine." He said, "The gift registry had classified Vale's capacity as minor scent sensitivity rather than the full scent sovereignty gift class that formal assessment now documents as the correct classification." He said, "The council selected her for the transfer in part because this registry classification made her appear to be an appropriate goodwill gesture." He said, "The registry classification was wrong." He said, "The council's selection process produced a governance transfer of the most strategically significant scent-based gift in the kingdom's documented history to the enemy court." He said, "She survived the transfer by activating the full gift under survival conditions." He said, "She spent 14 months embedded in the Verath court using the scent sovereignty gift to gather the most comprehensive intelligence picture of a rival court this governance has ever received." He said, "She identified an assassination plot against this kingdom with complete operational detail, and transmitted the intelligence through a channel and code of her own design. He said, she did this without being asked. He said, she did this without compensation. He said, she did this while carrying the specific knowledge that the governance structure whose interests she was protecting was the governance structure that had transferred her without consent. He said, the final line of the intelligence message she sent read as follows. He paused. He said, I did not do this for you. I did it because the pack needed someone to. You should know the difference. He said, the court should know the difference also. He said, the 6 council members whose Verath court cultivation is documented in the intelligence record and corroborated by the Independent Accountability Functions investigation are subject to the formal accountability proceeding that the function is conducting. He said, the proceeding is independent of this session's authority and will proceed through its appropriate channel. He said, the petition's 4 arguments are denied. He said, the formal record reflects the complete and accurate account. He said, Vale will present her formal requirements to the court. She stepped forward. She presented 3 requirements. The Intelligence Sovereignty Office, a formal governance body with the specific mandate of recognizing, supporting, and operationally integrating practitioners whose gifts produced intelligence-relevant capacities that fell outside the standard governance functions existing framework. The office would maintain a classified registry of practitioners whose specific gift capacities, scent-based, sensory-based, memory-based, and the particular range of biological gifts that produced intelligence advantage were governed by the specific operational and ethical framework that intelligence work required. The office would have the formal governance standing to retroactively authorize operations conducted by practitioners who had been operating without institutional framework, and the forward-looking authority to authorize and support future operations through the specific institutional structure that protected both the practitioner and the governance interest. She said, I operated for 14 months without institutional framework, without authorization, without support, and without the specific professional protection that a formally recognized intelligence practitioner would have had. She said, the office exists to ensure that the next practitioner with the Scent Sovereignty gift or a comparable intelligence-relevant capacity does not spend 14 months in an enemy court as an unauthorized asset. She said, they do it with institutional support and formal recognition. The transfer consent reform, a formal governance mandate requiring individual consent and royal personal review for any diplomatic arrangement that involved the transfer of a person between courts. The reform would apply regardless of the arrangement's framing, cultural exchange, goodwill gesture, diplomatic gift. Any formulation that used a person as a political instrument required the specific procedural protections of individual consent and royal review. The reform would also establish a formal review of all existing diplomatic arrangements that had involved person transfers, with the specific mandate of identifying and addressing any arrangements that had been executed without the required protections. She said, I was transferred without consent in the name of diplomatic normalization. She said, the consent reform exists because the specific reduction of a person to a diplomatic instrument is not a governance category that this kingdom should maintain. She said, it is not a cultural exchange. She said, it is a transfer of a person, and persons require consent. The Council Accountability Provision, a formal governance requirement that all council decisions executed during the royal absence that involved a person, a rights-bearing transfer, or a diplomatic arrangement with individual human impact required formal post-execution royal review within 30 days of the royal return, with the specific provision that decisions found to have violated consent or review requirements during that post-execution review were subject to formal accountability proceedings regardless of the time elapsed since the decision's execution. She said, "The council executed the transfer because the timing made my review inconvenient." She said, "The provision removes convenience as a factor in the decision to bypass royal review." She said, "Inconvenient is not a governance standard." She said, "These three requirements address the governance failures that produced the 14 months and the transfer and the intelligence operation and the assassination plot's near success." She said, "They are not conditions for my personal decisions." She said, "The personal decisions are mine." The court voted. The petition's primary signatories voted against all three requirements. The remaining 57 members voted for all three. The Intelligence Sovereignty Office held its first formal session 31 days after the court vote. She had spent those 31 days building the office's founding framework from the specific, operational knowledge of 14 months of unauthorized intelligence work and the particular, institutional knowledge of what the framework should have contained to make the work possible, without the specific costs the unauthorized version had produced. The framework was comprehensive: the classified practitioner registry, the operational authorization protocol, the specific ethical guidelines for intelligence gift use, the particular support structure for practitioners operating in hostile environments. The transfer consent reform had been implemented within 14 days, the specific urgency of a governance reform that addressed an active harm requiring immediate structural change rather than the gradual phased implementation that complex reforms sometimes required. The existing diplomatic arrangement review had identified 11 historical transfers that had not included individual consent documentation. The review was addressing each one through the specific accountability process the reform established. The Council accountability provision had been applied twice in the 31 days, the particular initial applications of a new governance requirement to decisions that had been in the post-execution review window when the provision was enacted. Both applications had produced formal accountability findings. The findings were in the governance record. The 6 council members' accountability proceeding was ongoing through the independent function. She was not directly involved in the proceeding. She had provided the intelligence record and the formal court sessions account, and the independent function was doing the specific work that independent functions were designed to do. Darren had been present at every founding session of the Intelligence Sovereignty Office, not as the governance oversight authority, as the specific participant who had decided that the founding of an institution this significant required his genuine engagement rather than his supervisory presence. He had read the ethical guidelines section himself and had provided the specific governance authority questions that the section needed to address before it was formally adopted. He had attended the first classified practitioner registry assessment session and had received the specific briefing on what the sent sovereignty gifts formal operational parameters meant for the intelligence functions planning. He had come to the working sessions. He had asked questions that demonstrated he had done the preliminary reading. She had noted this in the particular careful way she noted things that were relevant to the evidence base she was building. The office's first formal intelligence authorization had been issued on the 28th day. The Specific covert assessment of a diplomatic arrangement whose terms raised the particular. Intelligence indicators that the office's monitoring protocol had been designed to flag. The authorization covered 2 practitioners, both newly registered, both carrying sensory-adjacent gifts that made them useful for the specific assessment the arrangement required. She had supervised the assessment. The practitioners had performed it. The assessment had identified the specific manipulation embedded in the arrangement's financial terms. The arrangement had been renegotiated. She was reviewing the office's first-month report when Darren came in on the 31st evening. He sat at the working table and said, "The first authorization." She said, "Yes." She said, "The assessment identified the financial manipulation in the Riva arrangement." She said, "The arrangement is being renegotiated on accurate terms." He said, "The practitioners." She said, "Yes." She said, "Both have been debriefed and are in the post-operation support protocol." She said, "Neither experienced the specific operational costs I experienced because they had the support structure the unauthorized operation did not." He said, "The support structure you built." She said, "Yes." He said, "Veil." She said, "Yes." He said, 31 days. She said, "Yes." The palace's eastern gate had the particular quality of a space that she had thought about on the evening of the 3rd day, the specific exit she had acknowledged as available and had chosen not to use. She came here sometimes in the evenings, not because she was contemplating leaving, but because the specific quality of a space she had chosen not to use had its own particular resonance for her. It was the place where she had acknowledged the gift fully, the particular specific acknowledgement. That having the capacity to leave and choosing to stay was a genuine choice rather than a forced one. She had always found this distinction important. Darren found her at the gate on the 31st evening after the court vote. He had come through the palace's east corridor with the particular direct quality of someone who had spent 31 days arriving at a specific conversation and was now arriving at it. He stood beside her at the gate. He said, "The eastern gate." She said, "Yes." He said, "I know what you thought about on the 3rd evening." She said, "How?" He said, "You told me what sorry required, and one of the things it required was honesty." He said, "I have been honest." He said, "I am asking you to be honest about this." She said, "Yes." She said, "I thought about leaving." She said, "I acknowledged the option." She said, "I found it insufficient." He said, "Because the pack needed someone to stay." She said, "Yes." She said, "And because the option of leaving with the full account undelivered was the specific kind of insufficient option that I have never been able to accept." He said, "Yes." He said, "Veil." She said, "Yes." He said, 31 days of evidence in addition to everything that preceded the 31 days. She said, "Yes." He said, "I want to acknowledge the bond here." He said it with the particular directness she had come to recognize as his genuine mode rather than his governance mode. He said, "At this specific gate," he said, "where you could choose to leave and are not leaving." She said, "Yes." He said, "Not because you cannot leave." He said, "Because you are choosing not to." She said, "Yes." She said, "I am choosing not to." He said, "Yes." He said, "The bond is present." He said, "I want to acknowledge it in the full version, the 14 months and the message and the return and the 31 days of building the institution that the gift required." He said, The full version includes the specific governance failure that produced the transfer. He said, "I am not asking you to forgive the governance failure as a condition of the bond's acknowledgement." He said, "I am acknowledging the bond alongside the accountability." He said, "Both are real." She said, "Yes." She said, "The evidence base is complete." She said, 31 days of daily presence, genuine engagement rather than governance supervision. The specific questions that demonstrated you had done the preliminary reading before the sessions rather than relying on the briefing summary. She said, "And the man who came to the Verath court personally and read the transfer agreement and found the welfare provision and used the specific correct mechanism to bring me home." He said, "Yes." She said, "The bond." She said, "Yes." She said, "In the full version, the transfer and the 14 months and the message and the return and the 31 mornings and this gate where I am choosing to stay." He said, "Yes." The Eastern Gate specific quality, the particular space she had acknowledged and chosen not to use, had the warm particular quality of a place that had been a genuine choice and that had become, through that choice, the specific place where she had decided what home meant. She thought, "I came back through this border 3 days after leaving the Verath court." She thought, "I did not know what home would mean when I arrived." She thought, "I know now." She said, "Yes." 2 years forward. The Intelligence Sovereignty Office had 17 registered practitioners in its active network. Not all of them sent sovereignty gift carriers. The office's founding framework having been designed to accommodate the full range of intelligence-relevant biological gifts. 7 carried scent-adjacent capacity at various levels of the gift's expression. 4 carried the specific memory recording gift that the classified practitioner assessment had identified as the particular intelligence-relevant capacity in their biological profile. 3 carried the particular sensory sensitivity gifts that produced the precise environmental intelligence that the office's field assessment function required. 3 carried gifts that fell outside the existing classification framework and that the office's ongoing gift assessment work was in the process of formally documenting. None of them were operating without institutional framework. All 17 had the specific formal protections, operational authorization processes, and post-operation support structure that the office's founding had established. They operated as authorized practitioners with the particular professional standing that the unauthorized version of the same work had not had, the specific difference between operating as the kingdom's greatest intelligence asset without knowing it and operating as the kingdom's greatest intelligence assets with full institutional recognition. The transfer consent reform had produced, in 2 years, the specific governance culture shift that formal reform sometimes produced when it was enforced rather than merely enacted. The phrase goodwill gesture had been retired from the diplomatic correspondence lexicon through the particular gradual process of a governance standard making certain formulations unacceptable. The consent documentation requirement had been applied to 37 diplomatic arrangements in 2 years. In 11 cases, the consent process had identified individuals who did not consent, and the arrangements had been restructured to accommodate persons who were actually willing. 11 people who had not been transferred without consent. The council accountability provision had been applied 7 times in 2 years. 4 of the 7 applications had produced formal accountability findings. The findings were in the governance record in the permanent format that the record required, not the particular administrative notation that could be archived to a low-visibility location, but the specific formal finding that was part of the primary record. The 6 council members' accountability proceeding had concluded at the 14-month mark of the reform period. The findings were in the record. She was reviewing the office's second-year expansion planning in the institutional chamber that had been established adjacent to the primary intelligence function when Darren came in. He sat at the working table with the quality of 2 years of mornings and said, "The Eastern Territory assessment." She said, "Yes." She said, "The practitioner team returns in 4 days." She said, "The preliminary findings suggest the specific diplomatic arrangement in the Eastern Territory has the particular intelligence indicators that the monitoring protocol flags." He said, "The same pattern as the Riva arrangement." She said, "Similar." She said, "Different specific mechanism." She said, "The practitioners will have the complete assessment in 4 days." He said, "Good." He said, "The registry expansion." She said, "Yes." She said, "The formal assessment process has produced 3 additional candidates in the preliminary contact range." She said, "The assessment sessions are scheduled for next month." He said, 3. She said, "Yes." She said, "The office's identification protocol is producing candidates at a higher rate than the first-year projection." She said, "I believe the undocumented intelligence gift prevalence in the general population is higher than the registry's pre-reform documentation suggested." He said, "Because the registry was not looking for what it had not already categorized." She said, "Yes." He said, "Veil." She said, "Yes." He said, 2 years. She said, "Yes." She thought about the wool merchant's diplomatic pouch and the 14 pages of coded intelligence, and the particular final line that she had written in the specific, clear voice of someone who had spent 14 months knowing exactly why she was doing what she was doing and who needed that to be in the record. She thought, "I did not do this for you. I did it because the pack needed someone to." She thought, "The pack has someone to do it now." The office has 17 practitioners with institutional support and formal standing, and the specific professional protection that the unauthorized version had not had. The practitioners are doing it for the pack because the pack needs someone to. And they are doing it with the particular framework that means they are not spending 14 months in an enemy court as an unauthorized asset who is also the person the governance structure sold to get there. She thought, that is what the 14 months made possible. Not the office alone, the specific institution that the 14 months had produced by demonstrating what the gift could do and what the governance structure had failed to recognize and what the reform needed to address. The transfer consent reform, the council accountability provision, the 17 practitioners, the 31 people who had not been transferred without consent. She thought about the Eastern Gate and the specific choice she had made there. She thought, I chose to stay. She thought, that was the particular thing that made all the rest of this possible. She placed the expansion planning document on the table and said, the assessment team's preliminary findings suggest we should prepare the second authorization team before they return. He said, yes. He said, I will arrange it. She said, yes. She thought, home. She thought, yes. Her story has come to an end, but our journey together continues. If you found this story inspiring and meaningful, please like the video to support me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next empowering stories. And if you have any thoughts about the characters, her journey, or want to share your own story, please comment below. I really look forward to reading and chatting with you.